profanan la imagen misma de Dios.
They desecrate the very image of God, the image in which we were created. Today, the heart of the Church sees the eyes of Jesus on these children and wants to cry. I ask for the grace to weep, the grace for the Church to weep, and make reparation for her sons and daughters who betrayed their mission, who abused innocent persons.
Perpetrados contra menores.
For those who follow the Catholic faith, there is no more important and sacrosanct relationship than that between the individual and their priest. What is said between them in confession has always been one of, if not the most closely guarded of secrets, between the person, the priest, and their God. But the Louisiana Supreme Court issued a recent blockbuster decision that has not only the local Catholic diocese up in arms, but should have anyone of faith beginning to question what is next for government ears. Let's welcome into MidPoint a Canon Law Dean for the Catholic University of America and a Jesuit priest. Father Robert Kaslyn joins us. Father, thanks so much for being here.
You're most welcome.
And here in studio, the past president of the Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers and chairman emeritus of the First Amendment Lawyers Association, Jamie Benjamin is here. Jamie, thanks for being here as well.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you again, my friend. Father, I'm going to go ahead and start with you because this comes down to a case in Louisiana. A teenage girl's confession to a priest can be used as testimony in a child abuse case. There are those people, though, who perhaps are not Catholic. The first thing they will say is, what's wrong with that? Aren't we stopping a crime?
The issue is not stopping a crime. Rather, it's the relationship between the individual who requests the sacrament of penance from a priest in the Catholic Church. Once the individual requests the sacrament, the sacramental seal, which is a matter not of human law, but rather divine law, enters in, so that the priest is not only not allowed to reveal anything he hears in confession, he's also penalized if he were to so reveal any information. Even the fact of whether or not an individual has gone to confession might even be under the seal, in as much as if someone goes to confession, it seems as though they have something to confess.
I want to show a quote here from former U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice Warren Burger that you will not be able to see, but our audience will hear. This is from Legal Issues and Religious Counseling, and I quote, "The clergy privilege is rooted in the imperative need for confidence and trust. The privilege recognizes the human need to disclose to a spiritual counselor in total and absolute confidence what are believed to be flawed acts or thoughts and to receive consolations and guidance in return." There is now the discussion of what we have as divine law versus man law. When does divine law then, Father, have to bend to the will of man's law?
It can't. Human law, to the extent that it is established by human beings who we believe in the Catholic Church have natural law at least implanted in them as humans, and divine law, that takes precedence over everything. One of the issues when it comes to confession is that the priest is not allowed to speak about what he has heard. The penitent can speak in as much as he or she is not bound to the seal, but there is no way of confirming or not confirming what a specific penitent claims a priest in the confessional said. So again, there's that responsibility in one sense to protect the priest from misunderstandings about what occurred in the confessional. He just cannot speak about what he hears, even if absolution is not given.
Okay, let me turn to Jamie here now. From the legal standpoint, this opens up a tremendous can of worms for everybody here, trying to keep that separation of church and state and to protect what the religion themselves and many religions believe is absolutely sacrosanct. How do you then start to cut the difference here and try to protect the victim and make this work for everybody?
When you start slicing it up and figuring out how the relationships between the law and the religious law intertwine, it's not as hard as you would think. There is a tension there between the Louisiana law and the confessional. But before we get to that, the Supreme Court of the United States recognizes a freedom of religion in the First Amendment to the Constitution. Our forefathers who put that together recognized that people should be able to practice their religion in freedom. And that was one of the reasons why we came here from Europe in the first place. People that practice the Catholic religion, both the priests and the people who practice the religion, the parishioners, have a right to be able to practice their religion. The people who are Catholic have a right to be able to go to confession without looking over their shoulder and worried that whatever is said there is ever going to get out.
But here comes the law, though, the law of man.
And the law of man in Louisiana, it's somewhat of a tension. It says that the person giving the confession has a privilege under the law, and that once that privilege is revealed, the person giving the confession, then the priest should be able to talk about it. But that ruins the religion. That ruins the relationship between the parishioner and the father in that setting.
Which is against what confessional is, which is supposed to be a discussion with one individual who is a representative of God, who you are the only person that you are sharing this with.
Of course. Here we have a situation where the suit in question is about money. The parents of an individual are suing the church and the particular priest, Jeffrey Bahi, who's the priest there in Louisiana, for money damages involved in what happened to this girl. So what do we have here? Money damages versus the freedom to practice religion. I would argue that it is much more important, the practice of religion than a civil money judgment that could be against this person.
All right, Father, I'm going to turn to you now on this when it comes down again to the breaking of the law. And this is what I think a lot of people are very concerned about. When they hear that someone has broken the law, when there is something that they have done, how then do we get to the point where the priest themselves is helping in order to help a victim? Because I think you will agree with me that a lot of people these days are very critical of the Catholic Church for not helping victims of certain crimes. So this cries to some people that, again, you're not helping a victim.
That's a good point. I should mention, too, that it goes back in the United States almost 190 years, the recognition of the confidentiality and inability of a priest to talk about what happens in confession. It was in the early 19th century in New York State with Father Coleman that the principle was established in at least New York State law that the seal could not be violated. We cannot, on the second point, we cannot separate the act of confession or the sacramental seal for confession from its ultimate spiritual purpose, which is to reconcile the individual with God and with the church. And so the penitent, depending on what is revealed, needs to demonstrate purpose of amendment, that is, willingness to face responsibility for what he or she has done.
Would it be the priest's responsibility then perhaps to say to the penitent, to the person who is in the confessional, you have created a sin against man, it is time for you to go admit your sin to man and take responsibility for what you're doing? At least try and bridge the gap?
Yes. However, the priest cannot make a requirement to go to the civil authorities. It cannot make that a requirement for giving or withholding absolution. If the individual is penitent and remorseful and has the purpose of amendment, absolution must be given. But at the same time, the individual might be denied absolution if, for example, he says he can't stop or whatever. Nonetheless, the matter is still under the seal. So it is not an automatic forgiveness, rather it's the conversation between the two and the determination of whether or not the person is necessarily remorseful.
Is remorseful indeed. I think that's
and
where you're
willing
going.
to make amends.
I only have about 30 seconds left. Do we see this now going through the courts for a long time? There's no real answer here.
I believe it is going to go to the courts. The Archdiocese of Baton Rouge has come out in a public statement saying that the priest should not reveal, and in fact should be held in contempt of court if it takes that far, and go to jail if in fact that is the result of it. There's something called anonymizing a confession, where if a priest finds out that somebody's in dire danger, he can go to the authorities without revealing this happened in a confession and say, that person, this particular person may be in danger, protect him.
Point.
So there's a way to do this without revealing the exact nature of what happened in the confession.
Point for another day we will do. Jamie Benjamin, thank you so much. Father Kaslyn, thank you so much for joining us. It's a long discussion. We will do it again. Stay with us, because here on MidPoint, we question everything.